Muted.
Okay, let's go ahead and get started. It's 12 o'clock. If you're having any problems or need to ask a question, go ahead and use the chat box. I'll be keeping an eye on that. We will start and end right on time. We'll be done probably before 1 o'clock. Again, if you do have questions, go ahead and type those in to the chat box. All right, let's get going. So this is me. I'm Emily Goldman, and in my professional life, I'm a certified financial planner, and I'm passionate about creating financial freedom for busy families. To me, that means freedom from the anxiety and worry that can build up when we don't plan or we don't know the next step to take. In my personal life, I'm a mom, and I know how challenging it can be to manage a busy family schedule, and on top of that, find the time and energy to think about the bigger picture and focus on the longer term, like we're doing today. So I commend you to taking the time to listen in today. These are my 3 kids and my top 3 reasons for my personal interest in saving for college. Julie is 17, Annie is 13, and Sammy is 8. So my focus on college saving will continue for quite some time. So let's start out by looking at the big picture. What you're going to learn on the call today: 5 crucial components to a college saving strategy, what you must do before your student enters high school, what you need to know now about the financial aid system, and how much to save and how to invest. So this is going to be interactive. You will want to write some things down, so go ahead and grab a pen and paper. We're going to cover a lot of useful and practical tips and tools. And again, we will end on time. So the agenda here, starting out, we're going to take a look at your vision and what values and experiences have shaped your views about higher education. Then we want to put a price tag on that vision, talk about selecting a college savings account, talk about creating an investment mix, and then wrapping that up, opening your mind. So in terms of your vision, let's first start with you and what values and experiences have shaped your views about higher education. And you might say, well, why does that matter? It's about my kids, not about me, and that's true. However, the first step to achieving any goal is to find some spark of inspiration to power your decisions and your actions. And if you're just dutifully adding money to a 529 fund for your children without really giving any thought to what that will mean for them and for you, you don't have a focus. And without this focus, you're unlikely to succeed at your goal. Life and business coach Brian Tracy expresses this connection between intent and outcome. He says, when you achieve complete congruence between your values and your goals, you feel strong, happy, healthy, and fully integrated as a person. You develop a kind of courage that makes you completely unafraid to make decisions and take action. And I would add also in this scenario here, thinking about financial goals, it also helps to set priorities and make trade-offs as needed. So with your pen and paper there, let's just take a few minutes. We'll kind of scroll through these quickly, but if you just were, take a few minutes here to jot down top of mind. You probably could come up with some of your own questions, but this is really just sort of to get you in the thoughtful frame of thinking about what you'd like to be able to do for your kids' college education. So how did you decide which school to attend? Certainly things have changed today, but what sorts of considerations did you have for yourself? And then how did you rule out the options that you did not select? What were the values there? What were the priorities for yourself? Maybe even thinking about what your parents' input was there. How much, if any, of your expenses did your parents pay? I definitely have clients whose parents paid for their whole college education, and then to them that feels like, oh, I need to pass this value down to my kids. In other cases, clients have paid part or all of their own, and that was very empowering to their launch as adults, and their view of themselves as self-sufficient. So I think all of those things really have an impact on how we think about our college saving goals for our own children. Did you work to cover any of the costs? Again, and it's interesting thinking about what you say if you're in a relationship, what your partner says. That's a whole nother element of this kind of introspective work, is thinking about your different experiences and how you mold your values together to create a plan for your kids. How do you feel today about your college education, its cost, and who footed the bill? Is there anything you wish you would have done differently? Seeing the impact on yourself, on your parents, on your family, maybe with friends. What would you do differently? How has this sort of shaped your thoughts for today? How do your experiences and beliefs affect your views about your children's higher education? And just to sum it all up, summarizing those questions there. I don't know if these are probably not all the questions to ask, right? But it's just important to take the time to reflect and introspect, sort of think through what are your motivations, what are your intentions, what are your dreams for your kids. There are many, especially here in the Bay Area, and I guess really everywhere, but there's so many competing financial demands on parents today that it's really important to have a grasp on what's really, really important. And so hopefully that will bring you some insight into thinking about this next part that we're going to jump into. Putting a price tag on your vision. So don't panic. We're going to do some very simple math here. And this can be part of your homework for today. And maybe you already have this really, really organized for yourself using Mint or Quicken or Personal Capital. There's a lot of ways to track this fairly easily, right? All of your assets less all of your debts. You just want to have a really good inventory. And so kind of looking at this from two perspectives. One is your personal resources here, your assets less your debts, what you can afford. And this is really an important piece of homework. And then and then the income and expenses and your cash flow that's available for saving now and for perhaps paying out of cash flow, part of the expenses in the future. So, and as you review cash flow and thinking about savings and other resources, sometimes this is, if there's a good opening to talk to your parents or your spouse's or your partner's parents about whether they would like to be part of your college savings plan. And I've definitely worked with clients whose parents were grandkids' college but had not even shared details with my client. Other grandparents may want to help, but they're not sure how to do it. So as you get more organized, it can make it easier to open up that conversation with the children's grandparents. Perhaps other relatives. Definitely have other clients who don't have their own children, but who have resources and would like to help nieces and nephews, for example. So just sort of things to keep in mind as you're going through this process, really thinking about all the resources. And so I guess this obviously looks like a basic financial planning tool, and it certainly is. And I would just also add, so you want to be sure as you're doing your expenses that you're accounting for saving for your longer term goals. First of all, you know what those goals are, and you've quantified those, things like retirement that are accounted for in your cash flow. And if you're not really sure how much you should be saving for retirement or for other important financial goals, now is definitely the time to figure that out. So your student may be too young to have a list of colleges picked out. We're just finally moving into that phase. My oldest is a senior, so getting way more practical insight into this process right at the moment. Even if your child is much younger, it can be insightful to look at actual costs of colleges, because there is really a broad range. And as you set some goals, it's helpful to have some specific numbers in mind. And certainly college costs will change. We know they're going up pretty dramatically by the time your children are ready to enroll. But as you if you're working towards a poorly defined goal, it's one of the best ways to produce well-defined stress. So one place to look is College Board's annual survey. It's called Trends in College Pricing. You can find it on collegeboard.org, listed there on the screen. And this survey breaks down costs based on the type of school, so public, private, in-state, etc., and into categories of tuition, room and board, books, supplies, transportation, so you get really a complete picture of total expense. And then on Peterson's, you can find detailed information about the total cost of college, the total cost of attendance for college, also all those details for individual schools. And one thing to think about is that living expenses, which on average are around $9,000 per year for college, will account for a significant proportion of the total cost. And these can certainly vary by school. So for example, room and board for Berkeley, this was actually, I need to update, this was a couple years ago, but it was $15,308, but less than half of that, not even $7,000 at University of Montana in Missoula, which those two schools may not be on the same kids list, but it is definitely worth understanding what housing expenses are in the areas where your potential schools are. So I know these 4 and 5 figure sums can really cause many of us to panic, but remember that also that living expenses vary depending on your child's lifestyle expectations. So the younger your kids are, really the more you have an opportunity to shape that now. So just sort of, thinking about what we do for our kids while they're with us certainly sets their expectations for when they're not living with us anymore. So again, it's not really college planning per se, it's a little bit more, parenting and budgeting, but that certainly plays into the expense of launching them into adulthood. All right, so on to selecting the college savings account. I'm going to have a little pop quiz. So which is the best college savings option? And more than one answer may be correct. I always hated those questions on tests. It's really beyond the scope today. We could have a whole session just on this to go through all these possible college savings options. These are a handful. And for each, so today I'm going to focus on 529. That is typically, if people haven't started saving, that's typically where I have them focused to begin with. So that's where we're gonna take a little bit deeper dive there today. So for each option, though, as you think about what the different options are, you have to think about the key characteristics such as the potential for growth, risk of loss, tax implications. There's some of these are more tax advantaged than others. Ownership and control. Are you actually giving the money to your child, or are you maintaining control? Maybe a grandparent is maintaining control. That can create issues for good and for bad too. So really thinking that through, how easy it is to manage, and then fees and expenses as well as financial aid implications. So for most parents, the 529 accounts score really high in all of these categories and win out as the core college savings account. And my clients often use multiple saving options, but the core is usually the 529. The key benefits, they have tax-free growth, so as long as your withdrawals are used for qualified college expenses, there's no tax on any earnings, any dividends, any capital gains that were created in the 529 account. And the parents, or perhaps grandparents, not the student, maintain control of the account, and you can even transfer funds back out into your own name if you're the owner, although you would pay a 10% penalty and tax on any growth, and the penalty is also only on the growth. And funds can be transferred to other beneficiaries within the family. It's super easy to manage. Most plans have really good online access for investments, withdrawals, contributions. Really not difficult. They have a range of investment choices. Fees can certainly vary, but there are many options and lots of good resources for researching those. And then one thing that not everyone realizes is that most plans allow contributions from non-account holders, like I was mentioning, like grandparents, for example. So that you want to make sure you have that as an option as you choose your 529. Other relatives, of course, could contribute, or friends. Other people besides the account owners can contribute, I guess. My main point there. Yes, Juliana says financial aid packages. So you might want to, if you have a more specific question there, type that in, Juliana. But I think you're getting at financial aid implications for 529, which are typically also favorable. So as you're planning how you save.
Sorry to interrupt. That was actually
go ahead.
That was my comment earlier. I didn't realize when we were doing the hypothetical questions, the rhetorical questions, we weren't supposed to be contributing necessarily. But that is a concern. So for me, when I was going to college, financial aid packages were the deciding factor. And now as I start to build multiple resources for my children, I'm worried about how that will have implications on what they're eligible for. So, I mean, just looking at this list, what I have saved in a Roth may have a different impact from what I have in savings in a 529. So I'm just trying to understand how to maximize what they're eligible for when they're ready to go to college.
Yeah, and we're going to touch on that a little bit, how that works.
Okay, great.
Yep.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and go back on mute.
Okay, thanks, Juliana. Thanks for the comment. All right, so yeah, we're going to definitely get into that because that is certainly an impact on making these choices. So let's talk about creating an investment mix. One main thing is keep it as simple as possible. For most people, they're not going in and checking on these accounts, any accounts, from what I see with my clients anyway, on a regular basis. So you really want to make it as sort of self-sustaining as possible. And most 529 plans, and other options too, but within 529's most common available option and most used option is an age-based investment selection. And this is similar to what you will see in your 401k plans with target retirement date funds. So age-based funds, which start investing more aggressively or mostly in stocks when the student is young, and over time become more conservative with more bonds and cash. And this is really a terrific solution for parents who don't want to regularly review and adjust, which, like I said, most people in my experience don't. But anyway, even if you put it sort of on automatic pilot, it's really important to look at this at least annually. Certainly when your student enters high school, it becomes critical, and with the time frame to college so short and no time to recover investment losses, you really want to make sure you know what's in that account. Savingforcollege.com, I just wanted to touch on that, is a really terrific resource for researching these 529 plans, comparing costs and benefits. So you can select multiple plans and see them side by side. What are the fees? What are the investment options? And that's savingforcollege.com. That has really a lot of awesome information on all of this, all of these topics. Okay. So opening your mind. So colleges are they've really become businesses and very sophisticated in their marketing efforts over the past decades. And if you've had somebody near you applying, or maybe you have been in the college application process in recent years, it's incredible, really incredible what piles of stuff you get in the mail. So they're really trying to attract the best students. And this is really good news and bad news. So it's easy for students who don't really have a sense for what they're looking to get out of their college experience. It's easy for them to get caught up in college branding hype. And maybe this is most students, but the more focused kids are, I think the easier it is to sort of step outside that. The good news about branding is that schools are forced to clearly define who their best student is. What's the profile of the student they want to attract? And the better the match between the school and the student, the more likely the school will offer free money or institutional aid, not based on need. And that, well, that could be actually based on need or not, on need or merit. So, for example, this is some time back, but this still happens. I grew up in western Colorado, so that's primarily rural farming communities, and I attended University of Denver on a scholarship from the university that was specifically targeted at growing their student enrollment from western Colorado, a group they felt that was unrepresented for a Colorado school. So, I mean, I was a good student, and that was part of the analysis, but a big part was just where I lived, and that is, you know, still there are schools who are that specific about kinds of things that they're looking for. So school guidance counselors can be a powerful partner in this process. They really know the marketplace of schools, the marketing strategies, and they can help your student with self-awareness and selling points and matching them up with schools that you and your student may not even have considered or even known about. It's amazing when you dig into it how many colleges we have just here in the U.S. alone. Okay, so let's jump into a little bit of the financial aid contribution, financial aid analysis. So this is also from savingforcollege.com. Again, super helpful. You can do a estimate on there of what your financial aid could be for your student. But here's roughly how things get calculated. So this is for calculating expected family contribution. So whatever you're not expected to contribute, that gets made up. That's what gets made up by some kind of financial aid. And that could, financial aid could certainly include loans, which is not free money, but that is also where the free money falls. So you can see that student assets and income are counted much more heavily than parent income and assets. So your saving strategy would want to consider this. If grandparents are gifting to your children, for example, if they put the money into a UTMA account, so basically a custodial account, those assets count as student assets because the student does own those assets and has legal right to access them, even though they're not old enough and they need someone else over 18 to be on the account with them and custodian of the account. It's still their assets. Also, distributions from your IRA or Roth will increase your income for these calculations. So if you're thinking of taking money from IRA or Roth to help pay for school, which is an option, that will boost, right? That shows up on your tax return. That shows up as income to you. And notice also, this is a big one for us here in the Bay Area, debts are not part of this calculation. So this can be a double whammy when you have significant mortgage payments which are not counted, as well as high income, which you need here, right, to live and pay for some kind of housing. This is heavily counted. So parents who think their cash flow is tight before the college bills start might assume they're eligible for financial aid, but that's not correct. The formula does not look at expenses or debts, but at income and savings. So whatever you can do to boost your retirement savings, right, because that decreases your income numbers, as well as whatever you can do to decrease your debt and minimize your expenses will improve your odds of receiving aid. And of course, these are all smart financial planning moves as well. I mentioned there's a simple financial aid calculator on savingforcollege.com. It will help you kind of plug your own numbers in and see how that looks for you. It's called, I think they call it World's Simplest Financial Aid Calculator, something like that, on their website. And a final note is these guidelines are for federal financial aid, and individual schools may use their own formulas in awarding school-based or it's called also institutional aid, and those formulas are adjusted regularly. So if your child's young, these factors could change over time, certainly by the time they start college. So another reason to revisit this whole question on a somewhat regular basis, so you can make adjustments as needed. So assets that are not included. So when we look at the 2.6 to 5.6% of a parent's assets, there are things that are not included in that number. Retirement assets, equity in your primary home, family-owned business, insurance policies, and most annuities are excluded from your assets when determining the expected family contribution, the EFC. So again, the more you put into retirement versus other types of savings, that helps, as well as some of these other financial products which you may need. Certainly wouldn't recommend, there are people out there who are recommending annuities and insurance policies as ways to save for college. I'd say typically that does not make sense. It ends up being way more expensive way to attack college savings than many other options. So definitely be wary when people are, if you hear a sales pitch for that. So what you must do before your student enters high school, and if they're already in high school, go ahead and do this too. But the earlier the better. Prepare yourself, number one. So we talked about reviewing your own finances and setting a budget for saving now and spending later. And you have some resources now to use to learn about college costs. So remember to go back and do that homework of just clicking around and seeing what schools are actually costing right now. Secondly, review your own financial plan. Are you on target with your retirement and college savings goals? Are your savings invested properly? And just importantly, this is the time to review your insurance coverage, especially if you're planning to pay some college expenses out of your current income. You want to make sure you have enough disability and life insurance to cover college expenses if, God forbid, you die or become disabled and lose your income. Now is an awesome time, I'm sure many of you have already done this, but to create a budget and really look at what you can afford to save now and what you might be able to spend later on college. So this question can really only be answered well in the context of your own retirement planning. And it's trite but true that students can get loans for college, but parents can't get loans for retirement. So you want to make sure you're maximizing your retirement savings, or at least thinking through sort of what are the priorities for you before you aggressively save for college at the expense of retirement. That's something to think through really carefully for your own individual situation. And then, so we said prepare yourself, review your own financial plan, create your budget, and 4, have the talk, many of them, because many students get the message that if they work hard in school, through high school, it'll be enough to attend any school they can get into. Like they should just try to get into the best school they can. And of course, doing their best in school is the main thing that students have control over, and that's critical. For all but a rare few, though, it won't be enough to guarantee a full ride scholarship. So who pays and how much? Look for teachable moments when you can share your thoughts, your priorities for your student and for your family, and really discuss college expectations, the costs and the dreams, and realistically consider your child's abilities. So really thinking about how that matches up. All right, so let's get into a little more specifics here. In terms of costs. So this is from College Board data. This has probably gone up even since I put these slides together, but based on College Board numbers, which I mentioned before. Then this is data for tuition, fees, room, board, and books. So on campus, when I say room and board, like on-campus housing. And these are the numbers of what we are seeing now for public, private, and then Ivy. And these are averages, so obviously even within these categories there are large ranges. So this savings, I'm going to jump into how much you need to save to reach these targets. My presentation here assumes you will fund 100% all of the college costs for your student. So you can adjust based on, you're thinking you'll want to be able to pay half. Another nice sort of way to ease yourself into it is thinking about the sort of rule of thirds, paying saving for a third of this goal, planning to have your child apply for scholarships and sort of backup plan loans for the second third, and then the final third to be able to pay that out of cash flow while your child's in college. So that's another way to sort of think about maybe at least being able to do a third of this as a way to get started. So if you have a baby, there's some, so these are the monthly amounts that you would need to save to have everything saved by the time that child is old enough to go to college. And there's some simple calculators online also. World's simplest college calculator on savingforcollege.com, and then links for it. So I have a lot of this information is also covered in one of my ebooks on my website. You can find it under resources, under Learn. My Learn tab, publications. So I have a college savings ebook that covers much of this information, and some of these links are included in there as well. So the simplest college calculator on savingforcollege.com. So this assumes 6% annual college cost increase, which is roughly what we've been seeing, and then 6% annual investment return. So that's if your child is very new to the world. And you can get a sense of, the longer you wait, the bigger the numbers get. Right here's for a 4-year-old. An 8-year-old obviously makes a big jump. At 12, and at 16, it's much bigger numbers. So, and just a summary there, you can kind of see the progression. If you're thinking about it as sort of a monthly savings number, and again, if you're thinking in terms of half or thirds, just chop that number. That's the appropriate math there. Chop that number by a half or a third as a way to just come up with a number that's manageable for you for getting started. And I think, again, 529 is really a great place to start if you haven't already done that. So we've covered a lot of ground today. And I'll be sending the link to the recording. I also want to invite you here. I'm offering this college saving readiness assessment. So if you'd like to speak to me in person, and I can do that in person or on the phone, you can do either of those at tamarindfinancial.com/get-started. And what I'm doing with this is it's a discussion and discovery process with me, looking at where you are now and detailing your college savings goals. So looking at where the gaps are, how to close the gaps, and how I can support you in closing those. And sort of thinking about how to incorporate college savings into your overall financial planning, which is my main service that I offer as a financial planner. But this 45-minute session is complimentary. And certainly if there's a way that I can help you go forward, I would love to discuss that with you. So again, you can download my ebook on tamarindfinancial.com/learn, and then schedule with me at also the same website, Get Started. All right. And I don't see more questions coming in. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap up here and look forward to hearing from you. Have a great weekend.